I just want to give a formal apology to the entire population of Japan for all of the butchering of your language that I'm about to do. Hey guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here with another quick album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Zazen Boys record, Rando. Out of all of the now legendary post-hardcore bands of the 2000s, of which there are honestly many, Japan's Zazen Boys remain one of the most underrated in my eyes. Formed after the breakup of the extremely beloved band Number Girl, guitarist and vocalist Shotoku Mukai led the Zazen Boys through a number of highly intense and experimental, yet often instrumentally virtuosic records that were just as focused on melody and groove and complexity as they were on the pure, raw intensity that's generally associated with the more punk-based side of post-hardcore. 12 years have passed since the last studio Zazen Boys record, 2012's Stories, and Dando actually ends up acting as a record that manages to retain a lot of the great qualities that made the band so intriguing in the first place, while also evolving a lot of those specific artistic qualities and making for a record that feels uniquely theirs in the most current way possible. I mean, really, a comeback record like this, I was just kind of expecting it to maybe sound like more of what was going on Stories, and instead, what we have here is a completely refreshing, matured album from a band that still constantly seems to want to evolve, and for that, I deeply admire them. First and foremost is the aforementioned Shutoku Mukai, a bit of an icon in his admittedly very niche corner of highly experimental and just generally out there music, but nonetheless, his guitar work and vocal work with Zazen Boys has been extremely distinct over the years, and I find his performance on this record especially interesting. I mean, both his voice and his guitar work are noticeably less wild here than they have been on past records, but I mean, hey, it's been 12 years. It only kind of makes sense that things would change, and the restraint that he shows here ends up working out very well, kind of causing this record to sound very fresh in the context of the entire Zazen Boys discography. I think that this album is heavily rooted in where he is at now creatively and not trying to revive any older sounds for the sake of making some sort of big comeback or anything like that. And ultimately, I think that choice works out very well. It causes this record to feel so much more genuine than it would have if he had just tried to get the entire band to sound like they did, say, 20 years ago. There is an argument to be made that his jittery yet clean guitar work is a touch too rooted in classic artsy punk bands like Wire here, which is not really an issue that was, super applicable to, previous Zazen Boys releases, but as a whole, I think that his performances here, especially in the vocal department, deliver heaps of personality to Dando in a way that would be lacking with really any other frontman. Similar things could be said about fellow longtime guitarist So Yoshikane, as well as the smooth, tight, jazzy drumming of Atsushi Matsushita, two individuals who provide some excellent instrumental work here and prove why Zazen Boys as a band are so beloved from a compositional standpoint alone. I would say that the instrumentalist who truly changes the more traditional side of the Zazen Boys sound here, though, is none other than newly added bassist Mia, whose work dates back to very well-loved bands like Bleach, for example. I think that her highly complex yet consistently fluid performance style adds a certain degree of funk and a certain degree of groove to this record that it would lack without her presence. She really is a phenomenal bassist, and she often takes up lead instrumentalist roles here, even if she isn't necessarily pushed to the front in the mixing. This entire record really has this sense of structural rigidity that I would say for many other bands would come across as a forced attempt to really show off the actual virtuosic skills that they have, but in the context of Zazen Boys, I really do feel like this is just an entirely natural leaning into their more math rock kind of sensibilities. They really have grown since they first debuted long ago, and it's evident to see that here. There are a number of valid criticisms to make about this album, such as some of the riffs here being a bit too repetitious and, like I said, leaning a bit too far into its classic post-punk influences, as well as the fairly static sound here not really warranting the otherwise pretty average 51-minute runtime. But as a whole, I think that Dando is a really fantastic return from a band that never really got the credit that they deserved for making such a unique sound. This record is much more than just the sound of a once great band returning to the studio for the first time in over 10 years. Rather, I do genuinely think that Zando as a record is a big piece of maturing for Zazen Boys as a project. This sounds entirely unique within the context of their catalog. They managed to show off a ton of extremely well thought out and complex compositions, some very technically impressive passages from each individual member of the group, and it still feels just as filled with personality and just as lively as anything else they ever did, while still maintaining the sort of punky edge that they seemingly will always be carrying with them, even if that punky edge kind of translates to post-punk here. I'm going to give this record 3.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that is the end of this quick album review. I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.